and at the moment we have a huge number of leaks that can refer us to Poppy Playtime Chapter 4. Let's discuss the most important ones in this video. Now it's time to talk about one of the most anticipated characters we haven't seen yet, and I'm talking about the very cute dinosaur Bron. Many people were sure that Bron would appear in Chapter 3, because in the first teaser trailer after the severed body of Mommy Longlegs, we were shown Bron's head. But as we already know, the main antagonist of Chapter 3 is not Bron at all, and I'm sure Bron is the most desirable character we've seen so far. And it's probably time to tell us more about this dinosaur, especially since his life story in Playtime Co. is very fascinating, and it would be interesting to know how it will affect Bron in the future. In case you don't know, Thomas Clark, a 59-year-old full-time employee of Playtime Co., was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. After receiving the diagnosis, he willingly volunteered to be part of the Bigger Bodies experiment. Scientists placed his organs, eyes, and brain inside a Bron toy in what became known as the 1199 experiment. He was severely disoriented and did not know where he was or what had happened to him. When 1199 was introduced to the other experiments, they immediately realized that he was not an orphan forced to be an experimenter. As a result, Boxy Boo almost completely ate his vocal cords and thyroid gland before the research team intervened to stop the experiments from killing Bron. It took 12 hours of surgery to stabilize Bron's condition. He was then placed in solitary confinement to protect him from further experiments. And since we've already talked about Boxy Boo, I think it's time to give this character some attention. Because he, like Bron, is the monster that a lot of people want to see in the new chapter. Boxy Boo was one of the characters we see on that very ominous tape, The Hour of Joy. Boxy Boo is one of the main monsters whose death we haven't seen yet. Yes, in the previous versions of the game we saw the death of characters like Huggy Waggy, Mommy Longlegs, and of course the main character of the third part of Poppy Playtime, Catnap. And we shouldn't forget his former friends from Smiling Critters who died at his hands. So for now, Boxy Boo is one of the few surviving characters we haven't seen yet. So we can expect him to appear in all likelihood. My opinion about Boxy Boo is that I would be happy to see him in the new version of the game, if only the developers could introduce him into the story and make his existence in the game as interesting as possible. And now let's talk about less obvious options, namely that our new hero will be Catnap. Despite everything, we cannot exclude the possibility that we will be introduced to the already deceased Catnap. Of course, he will not be one of the main villains as it was in the third chapter, but as a secondary character, he is ideal. We all know that the prototype killed Catnap, but this amazingly horrible cat is so well liked that I think it is necessary to make him a reference in the new chapter. But how will that happen? I'm sure that Chapter 4 will reveal the biggest secret of the Playtime Corporation, and we'll finally find out who the prototype is. But it will be at the end. But before that, we will fight with some bosses in the window, or somewhere else we will see Catnap, who will help us like in the third chapter. But I think everyone understands that this help will not be for the sake of our salvation, but just so that we can finally meet the prototype. That would be very interesting. And talking about Catnap, where can we get away from such a character as Prototype? And you will tell me that we have seen him in the past versions of the game. In the first chapter, he was in the form of a reference on the tape. In the second part of the game, he stole the remains of Mommy Longlegs. And in the third part, he was the main villain who obeyed Catnap and forced all the others to do the same. Maybe in Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 we will see him in full form, and we will see what the sacrifices of all the monsters led to. Of course, there is a theory that Prototype is actually kind and wanted to free all the monsters from the abuse of the Poppy Factory workers, but then how can we explain the murder of his main subordinate by Catnap? Besides the above-mentioned characters, the developers of Mob Entertainment can add completely new monsters that we have never seen before, as for example in the third chapter they added Miss Delight. And maybe it will be one of the old forgotten characters that we could see in the form of a drawing or a toy. We can only wait for the release of the game trailer of the new part of the game to dispel all our assumptions. I have already mentioned the long-legged family several times. Of all of them, we have seen only Mommy Longlegs, but the rest of the family members in the previous parts of the game we did not have a chance to see. Even though we know that the prototype took Mommy Longlegs' body at the end of Poppy Playtime Chapter 2, I'm sure he's doing it for a reason. Well, Mommy Longlegs isn't the only member of her family. Baby Longlegs may also appear in the new chapter, and considering the fact that we haven't seen him yet, I'm sure his appearance is almost certain. But as what kind of character? Whether he'll be positive or negative is hard to say. On the one hand, his mother died because of us, but there is also a prototype who took her body and who knows what he is doing with it. However, I'm more confident that Baby Longlegs will be on the side of the prototype, because as we know, the prototype is very good at subduing monsters, and it's very easy for a grief-stricken Baby Longlegs to make Baby Longlegs think that we killed his beloved mother. I think if he does appear, we will see him closer to the end of the 4th chapter. And recently I found very interesting leaks that could refer us to one of the scenes of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, and also showed us the face of the prototype that we know since the first part. On the first leak, we were shown a warehouse that will be one of the locations of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, but more importantly, we were shown the body with the already known hand and the side of the prototype's face. And by the looks of it, his body will be huge, but if you think that's it, you're wrong. In the second leak, we can see the full face of the prototype, and judging by the first 2 leaks, we can safely assume that the prototype is not entirely made up of monsters that are taken away. And given the fact that we can clearly see human features, I have a hunch that the prototype is one of Playtime Co.'s employees. On the third leak, we once again realize how huge the prototype will be, and we also finally understand what shape its body will be. But what I am more interested in is some toy on its hand, and most likely it's one of those evil smiling critters toys, namely the Bobby Bear Hug toy. Well, on the 4th leak we see nothing new except that on top of the prototype's body, there is Boxy Boo's body. It is still unknown if this is a real character or just a toy that looks like him, but based on what we know about the prototype, I would venture to guess that it is Boxy Boo. The first one, and one of the most interesting to me, is the fire hand. If you look closely, you will notice that this hand contains a huge amount of small details. It is important to note that the main feature of this hand is that it can shoot fire. Remember the fragment where we paralyze Catnap with an electric charge, and if you think that the effect of our fire hand will be the same, you are very wrong. The whole point of that hand is that we can just scare monsters away or hurt them a little bit, but we cannot kill anyone with that hand. And then there's another reference from Chapter 3. The gun hand has a certain number of charges, and then we have to wait to shoot again. And our fire hand will have the same mechanism, but we won't be able to use it forever because the gas we use is stored in a cylinder that will be attached to our back, and once the gas runs out, our hand will just be useless and we'll probably throw it away. The next hand is no less interesting, the Harpoon hand. This hand itself consists of 2 parts, which we will have to look for in Chapter 4. But believe me, this hand deserves that we tried and found both the hand itself and the harpoon, which will actually be the basis of the action of this hand. What is the main point of this hand? An ordinary hand will be no different from the blue hand and will be the most ordinary part of our body, but once we find the harpoon, it will be much more interesting. Just like the fire hand, the main part of the harpoon will be attached to the back of our main character, and the tip itself will be attached to the hand. And there are only 2 ways to use this arm. Firstly, its main purpose will be faster movement of our character thanks to the ability to attach to the wall and be held in it. Now we won't need special elevators or devices for our arm to fix itself, and we will be able to climb up. It will be enough to shoot from the harpoon hand, and we will be able to reach any point on the map. I agree that this will improve the game a lot, and of course we could theoretically use this hand as a weapon, but except for a small wound, it is unlikely that it can harm our monsters in any way. Now let's talk about another hand that you can see in the thumbnail of this video, and of course I'm talking about the dash hand. Let's go back to the moments when we need to use the power of our hand to climb up. However, this action is only realized in the vertical plane, which has always seemed strange to me. I'm talking about why the authors still haven't done something similar so that we can move horizontally in the same way. And that's exactly what Dash Hand will be able to do. I'm sure that such an ingenious solution can help us a lot in speeding up the game, and it is also important to realize that with the help of Dash Hand, we will be able to move absolutely anywhere. But there is one very important exception. Dash Hand will be safe for us only when we see this picture of a red hand with a grabber. And if we just touch a random wall and try to move thanks to Dash Hand, of course we will do it, but the consequences will be very sad for us. And just to exclude such unfortunate situations and can be introduced Winged Hand. This hand gives us the ability to jump 2 times higher than it happens during normal play. But what if in addition to that we have a marker on the ground, thanks to which, when using the Winged Hand, we can lift so high that even the highest play care point will be an easy task for us. Or I have another suggestion. Maybe the Winged Hand will have another dizzying feature in addition to all of the above, and I'm talking about flying. Yes, you are right. Flying around the map. Without any mods and just during the normal passage of a new chapter. But there is a catch. We can only use flying once during the whole game, and as soon as the time we can fly is over, the Winged Hand just disappears and we can never use it again. And in order to recharge it for flight, we will have to find a secret box with a special device, and it will not be as easy as many might think. If I'm right, the Winged Hand will probably be the most coveted target for many Poppy Playtime players. We have just discussed the Winged Hand that can help us jump, and what if they add a hand that allows us to run much faster than the player himself? Even if we use acceleration, it cannot always help us to escape from the monster, but if we use the speed hand, such a task becomes much easier to implement. The mechanism of this hand is very simple. We just have to put it on, and that's it. Thanks to speed hand, we will be able to move around in places 3 or even 4 times faster than now, even using acceleration. But again, speed hand has its drawbacks. Of course, this hand will not disappear and we will be able to use it from the moment we find it until the end of the game, but at the same time, its charge will be limited. I think we will be able to use Mega Acceleration for 15-20 seconds, and then we will have to wait about a minute or maybe 2 minutes for the speed hand to become active again. And that's the end of our video. Bye bye everybody. Bye bye.